Hello students, welcome to Nelson's Primary School. Today we will start with subject English text. Chapter number 16, The Mannequin That Lived. The author of this chapter is L. Frank Baum. Now before we go to the chapter's explanation, we will see characters in the story. So that is a tankomanky, an elf, a mannequin, Mr. Flowman, janitor, newsboy, bus conductor, and Inspector Mugg. Now, plotting of the story. Have you ever wondered what would happen if a lifeless thing comes alive? What events would follow? Now, children, we will understand this fiction story about a lifeless object that comes to life and what follows after that. Now, L. Frank Baum, the author of this chapter, he was born in 1856 and died in 1919. Here you can see the picture of L. Frank Baum. L. Frank Baum, he was an American author of children's books. Known for writing The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, Baum wrote 13 novel sequels and 9 other fantasy novels. Mother Goose in Prose and By the Candelabra's Glare are some of his famous works.
This is a very short story by L. Frank Baum. Tankomanky, the mischievous elf, is inspired to play a practical joke when he sees a wax mannequin in a display window of Flowman's department store. Breathing twice upon her forehead, he provides her life, then goes on his ways. The wax figure is so surprised at the sudden life that she remains still, watching the women who stare at her from the street. Fortunately, it is nearly closing time. Soon the blinds are drawn and the staff departs for the evening. The wax woman sits and thinks for hours in her largely vacant mind. The one idea that formed is to be like the real woman she has seen. She took one hat which suited her fancy yellow dress. Then she remembered that gloves were also worn by women, so she took a pair of pea green gloves from the case, and next she selected a parasol with no idea for what it was used. But other ladies carried those things, so she also took. Then she tried to go out of the store, but every door was closed. Then next morning, when the janitor opens the door, she boldly walked out into the world. She used to copy the people around her. While she was walking, a lady saw the price tag on her dress, so she informed the wax lady that there is a price tag hanging behind. So the wax lady replied, "Yes, I know, it was of $20, but now it has been reduced to $19.98. So the lady got shocked by such answer and she walked away. Then the wax lady met a newsboy. So she asked, "What is this for?" So the newsboy said, "Of course for reading." So she confessed that she can't read, but hearing that, newsboy called her a dummy. After that, she saw a bus on which people were boarding. So now, as you know, she was copying people. This time also she did the same thing. She also boarded the bus with them. In bus, the conductor asked her for the fare. She started thinking what he meant. So conductor shouted that either you pay the fare or get off the bus. But then also she didn't understood. So conductor grabbed her by the arm, but when his hand came in contact of her arm, he was surprised because when he touched her, he came to know that it was wax instead of flesh. So he got scared and yelled and jumped from the bus like he had seen a ghost. By seeing him, the other passengers also yelled and came out of the bus. And the wax lady, she also copied the people and jumped from the bus and stepped in front of a car coming at full speed. And before she thinks something, she was knocked down. She ends up in an accident that damages her. Policeman reached there and took out the dummy from under the wheels. policeman got shocked that she was alive, but her dress was badly torn and her head and the left ear was entirely gone inside, but she quickly wore her hat. The cops called a hurry-up wagon and taken her to the station. Till wagon came, people started shouting that she's a wag, she's a dummy. The policeman inquired her, but she did not reply anything. Then it was decided to take strange creature to the headquarters. Then they reached at police station and locked her in a cell. Then a patrolman informed that Mr. Floman arrived and complained about his shop's missing dummy. So policeman replied, how a dummy can run away, how a dummy can live. Mr. Floman complained and asked the compensation for the things which dummy has taken from his shop, like gloves, hat, parasol and the dress which she was wearing. Then inspector asked how could a wax dummy run away. So Mr. Floman said, my janitor had seen when she was running out. So why didn't your janitor stop her? Policeman inquired. So Mr. Floman replied that he was too frightened and added by, what about my things? I want her to be arrested. Policeman informed that you can't take any legal actions against her because there is no law for dummies. So Mr. Floman asked, so now I have to lose that all money? Inspector Mugg replied, not at all. We have already locked up that dummy in cell number 16. You can go and recover your property. Then Mr. Floman with the policeman went to the cell 16 and there they found only a lifeless dummy which was cracked and head was badly damaged and the costume was torn, dusty and soiled. She lost her life again because Tanko Monkey had flown by and breathed once more upon her head. So Inspector Mugg said, see, I was knowing all the time that dummy can't live. They are wood and wax and that's all there is of them. Another policeman whispered to himself that this may be the rule, but this one was a dummy that lived. I hope everybody understood this chapter. Thank you. Now we are going to do chapter reading. Section 1. The Mannequin That Lived. Have you ever wondered what would happen if a lifeless thing comes alive? What events would follow? Part 1. Tanko Monkey was an invisible, mischievous elf in fairyland. He flew through the city one afternoon and noticed a figure of a wax lady standing behind the big glass window of Mr. Floman's department store. The wax lady was beautifully dressed and extended in her stiff left hand was a card bearing the words, Rare Bargain. This stylish costume imported from Paris, former price $20, reduced to only $19.98. It was late evening. A crowd of women shoppers stood staring at the wax lady and the announcement. Tanko Monkey flew close to the wax figure and breathed twice upon its forehead. The dummy became alive, but wondered at the change that come over her. She was so dazed at the unexpected sensation that she continued to stand stupidly staring at the women outside and holding out the placard. Before she could decide what to do, a man came around and drew down all the window shades, shutting off the view from the curious shoppers. The store was closed for the night and only some staff remained in the store. The window in which the wax lady was boxed in was like a little room so that the staff never noticed that the dummy, when left to herself, dropped the placard to the floor and sat down upon a pile of silks. Who am I? Where am I? How am I alive? She wondered. She had little time to think about it, but she did not want to remain in the window and be stared at by a lot of women. It was late at night now. Dim lights were burning in the big deserted store. So she crept through the doors of her window and walked down the long aisles in the store, pausing now and then to look with much curiosity at the wealth of finery around. When she came to the glass cases filled with trimmed hats, She remembered having seen them upon the heads of the women in the street. She selected one that suited her fancy and placed it carefully upon her yellow locks. When she reached the glove counter, she remembered that gloves were also worn by the women she had seen. She took a pair of pea green ones from the case. Next, she selected a parasol with no idea what it was used for, but other ladies carried such things, so she also took one. When she again looked at herself in the mirror, she decided her outfit was now complete. She tried leaving the store but found every door locked. The wax lady was in no hurry. She inherited patience from her previous existence. Just to be alive and to wear beautiful clothes was sufficient enjoyment for her at present. So she sat down upon a stool. I would rather wait quietly until tomorrow, she wondered. When the cleaner unlocked the door in the morning, the wax lady swept past him and walked with stiff but stately strides down the street. The poor fellow was so shocked at seeing the well-known wax lady leave her window and march away from the store that he fell over in a heap. When he recovered his senses, she had turned the corner and disappeared. It was early in the day and people were hurrying along the streets. She made the window trimmer of her store. The man, seeing something familiar in the lady's features, politely raised his head. The wax lady also raised her head, thinking it the proper thing to do. The man hurried away with a horrified face. Then a woman touched her arm and said, "Beg your pardon, ma'am, but there's a price tag hanging on your dress behind." "Yes, I know," replied the wax lady stiffly. "It was originally $20, but it's been reduced to $19.98. The woman looked surprised at such indifference and walked on. "Here's your morning paper," yelled a newsboy. "Mine, did you say?" she asked. "Sure, Chronicle, Courier, Our Public, and Dispatch. What will you have?" "What are they for?" inquired the wax lady simply. "Why, to read, of course, all the news, you know." She shook her head and glanced at a paper. "It looks all speckled and mixed up," she said. "I'm afraid I can't read." "Ever been to school?" asked the boy, becoming interested. "No, what school?" she inquired. The boy gave her an indignant look. "Say," he cried, "you are just a dummy, that's what you are." "I wonder what he means," thought the poor lady. "Am I really different from all the others? I look like them certainly, and I try to act like them, yet that boy called me a dummy queerly." She walked on to the corner where she noticed a bus and some people getting in. The wax lady, still determined to do as others did, also boarded the bus and sat down quietly in a corner. The conductor approached her and said, "Fare, please." "What's that?" she inquired innocently. "Your fare," said the man impatiently. She stared at him stupidly, trying to think what he meant. Come, growled the conductor. "Either pay up or get off." Still she did not understand, so he grabbed her by the arm and lifted her to her feet. But when his hand came in contact with her arm, he was filled with surprise. He stooped down and peered into her face, and seeing it was wax instead of flesh, he gave a yell of fear and jumped from the bus, running as if he had seen a ghost. At this, the other passengers also yelled and sprang from the bus. The wax lady, seeing the others run, jumped from the bus last of all and stepped in front of a car coming at full speed from the opposite direction. Before she understood her danger, she was knocked down. Part 2. A policeman reached down and pulled her from under the wheels. Her dress was badly torn and soiled. Her left ear was entirely gone and the left side of her head was caved in, but she quickly scrambled to her feet and asked for her hat. The policeman handed it to her and noticed the great hole in her head. The poor fellow trembled so frightfully that his knees actually knocked together. Why, ma'am, you are killed?" he gasped. "What does it mean to be killed?" asked the wax lady. The policeman shuddered and wiped the perspiration from his forehead. The crowd that had collected was looking upon the lady wonderingly. A middle-aged gentleman now exclaimed, "Why, she's vexed. She's one of those dummies they put in the windows." The people who had collected shouted, "You are right, she's dummy." "Are you?" inquired the policeman sternly. The vexed lady did not reply. She began to fear she was getting into trouble, and the staring crowd seemed to embarrass her. Suddenly, somebody attempted to solve the problem by saying, "You guys are all wrong. Can a dummy talk? Can a dummy walk? Can a dummy live?" "Hush," murmured the policeman. "Look here," and he pointed to the hole in the lady's head. A second policeman also arrived, and it was decided to take the strange creature to the headquarters. So they called a hurry-up wagon. The damaged wax lady was helped inside and driven to the police station. The policeman locked her in a cell and hastened to tell Inspector Mugg the wonderful story. Inspector Mugg was not in a pleasant mood, so he roared and stormed at the unlucky policemen, saying they were themselves dummies to bring such a fairy tale to a man of sense. The policeman tried to explain, but Inspector Mugg would not listen, and while they were still disputing, in rushed Mr. Floman, the owner of the department store. "I want a dozen detectives at once, Inspector," he cried. "What for?" demanded Mugg. "One of the wax ladies has escaped from my store and eloped with a $19.98 costume and $4.25 hat and $2.19 parasol and a 76-cent pair of gloves. I want her arrested." While he paused for breath, the inspector glared at him in amazement. "Is everybody going crazy at the same time?" he inquired sarcastically. "How could a wax dummy run away?" "I don't know, but she did. When my janitor opened the door this morning, he saw her run out." "Why didn't he stop her?" asked Mugg. "He was too frightened, but she's stolen my property, Your Honor, and I want her arrested," declared the storekeeper. "You won't be able to prosecute her," said the inspector, "for there's no law against dummies stealing." "Am I to lose the $19.98 costume and the $4.25 hat and—" sighed Mr. Floman bitterly. "By no means," interrupted Inspector Mugg. "We have already arrested the wax lady, and she is locked up in cell number 16. You may go there and recover your property, if you wish, but before you prosecute her for stealing, you would better hunt up a law that applies to dummies." "All I want," said Mr. Floman, "is the $19.98 costume and—" "Come along," interrupted the policeman. "I'll take you to the cell." But when they entered cell number 16, they found only a lifeless dummy lying on the floor. Its wax was cracked and blistered, its head was badly damaged, and the bargain costume was dusty and soiled. Tankomanki had flown by and breathed once more upon the poor wax lady, and in that instant her brief life ended. "I knew all the time the thing was a fake," said Inspector Mugg. "It seems sometimes as though the whole world would go crazy if there wasn't some level-headed man around to bring them to their senses. Dummies are wood and wax, and that's all there is of them." "That may be the rule," whispered the policeman to himself, "but this one was a dummy that lived." L. Frank Baum. He born in 1856 and died in 1919. He was an American author of children's books. Known for writing The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, Baum wrote 13 novel sequels and 9 other fantasy novels. Mother Goose in prose and By the Candelabra Glare are some of his famous works. Thank you.